Hi there, my name is Matti Sulanto. I'm a photographer based in Helsinki, Finland. In this video, I'm gonna take a look at this Lumix G 42.5mm f1.7 lens for the Micro Four Thirds system. May I encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and tap the bell so you won't miss any of these high quality videos that come out every Tuesday and every Friday. This lens is not very new. It came out in 2015 and I also reviewed it then when it was a brand new product. However, back then I was using a 16 megapixel camera. Now I have a 20 megapixel camera. The difference in megapixels is not huge, but certainly the additional 4 megapixels put some more stress on the lens too. So it's going to be interesting to see if I agree with my opinions that I had back then of this lens. This lens is extremely compact and lightweight. It weighs only at around 135 grams with a hood with no caps, and the filter size is 37 millimeters. And this is available in two colors, black like this and also silver gray. I personally prefer black because the black is the only color for photo equipment. There's no arguing about that. And the hood is included in the price, which I think is really good. This lens is not weather sealed, but if you have to shoot in a light rain or something, the hood protects the front element from the water droplets, or also in some other situations from small bumps or something like that. I find it interesting and also a bit amusing that the focal length is exactly 42.5 millimeters. I think Panasonic wanted to make a point that this is exactly 85 millimeter equivalent in full frame terms. The field of view is, or the angle of view is 29 degrees, which is typical for a so-called portrait lens. The mechanical quality of this lens is pretty decent. The exterior is plastic, but it feels like high quality plastic, and there's only one moving part, the focus ring, and yeah, it feels like a decent piece of glass. Like I said, this lens is very small and compact, almost like tiny miniature lens. However, it still feels pretty good, well balanced, even on the G9, which is not the smallest Micro Four Thirds camera. And I haven't tried this on any of those really small Micro Four Thirds camera bodies, but I would imagine that this would be a really nice pair on one of those two because of the small size. The closest focusing distance is only 31 centimeters, which makes this like a semi-macro lens and really versatile for occasional close-ups. Of course, it doesn't replace real dedicated macro lens. If you are into insects and some other tiny things, you may want to get a real macro lens, but this can be very handy for some occasional close-up work too. The normal minimum focusing distance for a similar Micro Four Thirds lens is typically about 50 centimeters, so there's almost 20 centimeters difference, and that's a big deal. This lens also features an optical image stabilizer, and that combined with the IBIS of the G9 makes it a very powerful combination. There's really not that much to say about the autofocus. It's extremely fast and very accurate and silent. It's so fast that sometimes I think it reads my mind. I only think about focusing and it's focused already. And typically for the Micro Four Thirds, the distortions and chromatic aberrations are corrected in camera, so They are not visible and nothing to worry about. However, there is some longitudinal chromatic aberrations, I hope I pronounced it correctly, also called bokeh fringing visible, especially wide open. It means that you can see green halos around the highlights in the back of the focus plane and purple halos around the highlights in front of the focus plane. It's nothing unusual for a fast lens like this, and I would say this lens is not a especially bad example in that regard. I'd say this is about average. You can correct them in Lightroom or similar software. However, it's hard to remove them completely, but you can make them disappear to a degree that they are not distracting anymore. There is some vignetting visible, of course, wide open, but it disappears when you stop down to about f4. I personally don't mind about little vignetting as long as it's not extreme and it's pretty linear. On some lenses the vignetting is so bad that the corners are almost black and they seem like they've been sort of cut off. On this lens it's not that bad, it's actually quite pleasant, and often I add vignetting in post, so I don't mind about that. What about the sharpness then? Is this lens sharp? Yes, this lens is very sharp from wide open until the diffraction kicks in at around f8 or something. However, something like f11 is still usable if you need a lot of depth of field. What about the bokeh then? This is a portrait lens after all, so the bokeh is important. I would say the bokeh is pretty decent. It's not the best or creamiest bokeh I've ever seen, but it's still pretty good. There are some onion rings around the highlights. They may or may not be distracting, and it's of course a matter of taste also. It depends how far the highlights are and also what the focusing distance was, and so many things. But overall I would say the bokeh is pretty okay, not the best, but pretty good. And because this is a portrait lens, I invited some friends over and made some portraits. Let's see how that went. It's really overcast and ugly day today, but yesterday was gorgeous, and I went out and pointed this lens into the sun to find out how it handles the backlight. And no matter how I tried, I didn't get any reflections or contrast breakdown or anything like that. So I would say this handles backlight really, really well. Like I said at the beginning, the image stabilizer on this lens combined with the IBIS of the G9 is a very powerful combination. I managed to get solid constant results at around half a second exposures. But when I went beyond that to about 1 second exposure, my results were not constant anymore, and it took me several frames to get a sharp 1 second frame. However, your results may vary, and especially if you're a younger person, maybe your hands are much steadier than mine. All in all, I would say in any case that the image stabilizer is very, very good on this lens and on this body combined together. This kind of short telephoto is without doubt a classic focal length. And if you combine it with the two other lenses from Lumix lineup, the 15mm f1.7 and the 25mm 1.7, you get the classic 3' toolkit. And that should cover almost everything you ever have to shoot. If you then need wider, you can get a super wide zoom, and if you need longer, you can get a tele zoom, and that's everything you ever need. And if I had to choose 3 micro four thirds prime lenses that I would have to use for the rest of my life, these 3 would probably be the lenses that I would choose. For me, this kind of short telephoto lens is important in my work. I use this a lot when I make corporate portraits, and this particular lens is one of my favorites. But in my personal work, I very seldom use a lens like this. I more often use the 15mm and the 25mm that I showed you just, and of those 2, the 15mm is my favorite lens. I guess the spring is here because I can hear the birds, even though it doesn't look like spring today. This kind of lens is suitable for portraits, of course, I've said it many times already, but also for maybe travel because it's light and compact, some indoor sports, it's fast and fast focusing, and also general photography. I'd like to conclude my review by saying that this is a great little lens. It's sharp, it's light and compact, and the 31 centimeter close focus distance makes this versatile and unique among similar micro four thirds lenses. The only real downside is the lack of weather sealing. It's not a big downside for me, but if you work a lot in damp or wet or hard conditions, maybe you should consider another lens. But it's hard not to say anything else but highly recommend it. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.